Hello and welcome to the latest edition of The Talking Point with Chris, Jack and Stevie Clifford. So far on the series, we've discussed the big issues in the boardroom and looked at the future of Captain James Tavernier. Thank you for your support and all the feedback on the show. It is greatly appreciated. Stevie, we had the idea of our own show over the summer. I've produced a few of these now, and I'd like to thank everyone for their support, for joining us, for the comments, and also thank you for your help with them. This week we're back focusing on football once again, thankfully, and we're looking at the Europa League. Will it be a help or a hindrance to Rangers this season? Philippe Clement spoke a bit about this post-match on Sunday after the Hibs game, and he mentioned the fact Rangers had to play at 12 o'clock on the back of the win over Malmo. He wasn't happy at the kickoff time, wasn't happy at the preparation. I'll find the quote and I'll read a bit of what the manager said. He, as I said, after the game against Hibs, he said, "You play at 12 o'clock after a European trip, where you come home around 2 o'clock at Auchenhowie. So then you need to drive back home, so players sleep if they are lucky around 4. You have the next day training, you lose 1 night of sleep, you have 1 night of sleep, and this one is also short because you need to wake up really early to be ready for the game. So yes, I saw a few players or several players or almost everybody who played on Thursday, and even the guys who didn't play that were less fresh than in the last couple of weeks. It's normal. It's an issue for Rangers, Stevie, but ultimately when you are a club that is challenging for domestic honours, when you then have European campaigns, it's an issue that you just have to try and manage as best you can.
Yeah, look, first of all, thank you everyone. As you said, just to kind of echo what you said, a lot of the comments have been fun, a lot of them have been interesting, but the support's great and we appreciate it. And what we try and do, as you said, Chris, is tackle the biggest issues, don't we? So there's no point in having a show where we don't, tackle those. On this one, does he have a point, Chris? He definitely got a point. He's definitely got a point, but I think everything he says makes sense, and you can say that and also at the same time think to yourself, I understand what you're saying, but this is, we should be able to manage these situations. I thought we did. I agree with him. I thought we looked leggy. I thought everybody looked knackered. But I don't agree that it's a hindrance, Chris. The more time, the more that this club and the more that this team can kind of get together and gel, help more, I've got to be honest, and we'll maybe talk about this slightly more. I'm not sure that the decisions that he made helped the team or helped the performance as such. But that's maybe a question or something to discuss further down the line, Chris. But I know that he might not have liked it. Sky had Ipswich Villa and then Man U Spurs. They're not going to shift those to accommodate Rangers, are they? So, that's just a downside of missing out in the Champions League and being where we are and not being able to manipulate the schedule a wee bit more and be able to say, well, hold on, we're playing this, this and this. But the other negative, obviously, is you're only playing catch-up. I think I seen something this morning that we've only got 2 Saturday 3 o'clocks until, February time, which isn't great. And we're 5 points behind as it stands at the moment. We were 8 at the weekend, given that Celtic, because of the Champions League, normally play before us, Chris. But do you think we're capable of handling that? Do you think that played a wee bit of part of the performance on Sunday? Did we look leggy and a wee bit nervous? I mean, we shouldn't be 6 games into it, surely not.
I think I have to agree with you. I thought leggy definitely under pressure and feeling that pressure. I don't think so. I don't think it was a case of performance. I don't think they looked nervous. I just think, as you said there, they just looked a bit tired. These fixtures, yes, it's not easy to travel and then come back and go through your preparation. But as I said right at the outset, when you're in a title race, you almost just have to suck it up and get on with it. I don't think Clement was using it as an excuse. I don't think he was trying to put it forward as a get out clause to say, well, we weren't that great today, but here's one big reason why. I think he was just trying to let people know, always trying to mitigate it a wee bit rather than looking for a get ready made excuse. He knows full well that he just has to get on with it. He's not going to win any sympathy contest. And as you outlined there, you mentioned the English fixtures, not going to be able to change it. Now, Sky have their slots. Premier Sports have their slots. We saw earlier on this week the latest kind of batch of fixtures come out. Now, Rangers are 8 o'clock up at Pittodrie, they're 12 o'clock up at Dingwall. I think it's Hearts at Ibrox at 5 o'clock on a Sunday. These fixtures moved around on the will and on the requirements of TV companies. We know the state of Scottish football. They need money from the broadcasters. Plays a big part in funding the clubs, and Rangers obviously as one of the two biggest draws, their games are going to be moved more often than some other clubs. So it's not ideal, but they just have to get through it. The biggest issue with it for me is the point that you made secondary there, playing catch up in the title race. At some point, does that play too big a part? Does that pressure ultimately tell? I don't think it did on Sunday. And as you said, we're only half a dozen games in. If you're feeling the pressure of a title race now, probably not in the right place for you, because this is a club where that pressure is only going to increase. You're going to be under increasing amounts of pressure over the course of the campaign. I don't think that came into it on Sunday. But by the time you maybe get to December and you're looking at that hectic run of fixtures around about Christmas, if you're then playing second to Celtic after a couple of them, if there's in European football, or so there will be after Christmas this year, given the new structure, but if you qualify for knockout rounds, Celtic potentially not playing at all, and Rangers then playing Thursday, Sunday, I think that can come into it. They have handled that before. Actually managed to get to the final in Seville a couple of seasons ago, but I think that came at a domestic cost, and Rangers can't really afford to pay that domestic cost over the course of this season. I think that feeds into priorities for this campaign. We've both been in press conferences where somebody has asked the manager, "Is this top of your priority list? Is this top of your to-do list?" And he gives the same answer. He says, "I want to win everything. I'm here to win everything." Of course, that's not realistic. I don't think either of us will be tipping Rangers to go on and win to win all four this season. We might not even tip Rangers to go on and win anything this season. Never mind all four of them. But where does the Europa League lie for you? Not even in terms of a 1, 2, 3, 4, but how do you see the Europa League actually impacting Rangers over the course of the season? Because it's not an easy draw. They do have some big challenges in there. But if they could start well, which they did in Malmo, if that can be followed up against Lyon on Thursday night, you think it's Steaua Bucharest to come to Ibrox, very quickly they could find themselves in a promising position in this new league format.
How important is it? Is very important. There's a couple of reasons why. One, financially is the biggest thing. And we need to try and maximise income and everything else. So that's vitally important. Secondly, Chris, this squad needs games to get used to each other, to find form, to find their feet, to find, that rhythm. And I think, ironically, Europe might suit them under the way Clement sets up and things. 5 away games now under Clement. He's unbeaten in all of them. I thought we were exceptional last week in Malmo, like genuinely exceptional. Wouldn't have been out of order if it was 5-0, 4-0, 5-0. The biggest issue I have, and I don't know if we can slightly deviate away from the point we make, but I think it's overall, like, on Sunday, I'm not sure that Clement did himself massive favours when it comes to, like, for example, halftime substitution for me was really strange because McCausland and Raskin didn't start on Thursday night, so they were the fresher players, and he brought them off to put on guys that had played, and or in the case of Dowell, maybe hadn't played. But my point being, he actually, the substitution worked. They actually weakened Rangers' grip on the game. And that, to me, and I thought it was harsh. I thought it was harsh on McCausland and Raskin. And you cannot expect these guys, right, to find form and find their feet and give them 45 minutes and just decide, he's not been good enough. When Raskin came off, the whole midfield fell to bits in terms of the control we had. Now, I didn't think McCausland was the worst winger on show, which leads to other questions and things like that. But what I'm saying to you is, in terms of the squad, I'm not sure he used it as well as he should have done on Sunday. And that brings me to the bigger question of, is it a priority? No. But you can be more clever about how you're using your squad. And that to me is a bit of an issue with Clement. I thought he got it wrong. It's questions, I've been kind of formulating questions for him ahead of the press conference tomorrow, and that's one of the ones I would like to ask him, if he looked at it back. Now, he'll say no, because he never does ever say, no, I'm happy with what I've done, but I'd be interested to kind of ask him about that. And priority, at Rangers, Chris, is to win every game, and that's not possible. It's not logical. This European game, I think, if you're being honest, you can write off Man United and Tottenham fixtures. So it leaves you 6. And you're hoping to come out of them 2 without being battered. And I'm sorry if that's really negative. I think it's just where we are. Lyon is the next one on Thursday night. Lyon is a massively difficult game. Your priority in these games is try to see what level you're at. Where is the team? If we play as well as we did as Malmo away, people think maybe we were getting overexcited by Malmo and that level of team. Well, let's see if we can take that Thursday performance into this Thursday's performance and see where a gauge of where we actually are. So priority-wise for me, the priority is the league. I think that's bread and butter for everyone. Unfortunately, priority this season is also the cups, because we can't afford to watch them do another domestic treble. We have to put silverware in Ibrox. We're not going to win the Europa League, but it would be nice to find some form, build things up, take things game to game. And you said about having Lyon and Steaua Bucharest. See if we can get 4 points out of that, to add to the 3 last week. I think you're starting to build up that head of steam that you talked about. And that brings me a wee bit, I think, we saw that a wee bit, Chris, under Europa League with Steven Gerrard. When you talk about, like, that night in Ufa and that run, I think we had 4 fixtures before we got to that point in Ufa. You had your 4 rounds, and that kind of built up the steam, and it got everybody gelling. And then you've got great nights. When you think about Rapid, Feyenoord, Porto, for example, these were all huge nights for Rangers. You would need to have another Morelos kind of performance when he, that night he carried the whole team. It was him and Davis that scored, but he was exceptional. And we would need to have that kind of led performance on Thursday night against Lyon. Porto, I think they're the same kind of level. But that experience for the likes of Tav, Goldson, Arfield, Kamara, etc., they were the stalwarts. So that's the benefit I want, Chris. Does that make sense?
I think
it gelled them together. So the question I'm asking you is, does it help them? Can they have the same influence on these guys that it did on them? Because that European run kind of launched a few careers. It made Alfredo Morelos who he was at Rangers, that's for sure. Could we get something like that from this Europa League run? That's the kind of thing I'm trying to balance off.
I think you mentioned it at the top of the conversation there about this team needs games. The more training sessions they have together, the more games they play, the more experiences, good and bad. You learn from the good times as well as the bad times. The more of these situations they find themselves in, it has to benefit them. They have to get better for all of that. You mentioned that night in Ufa there. I think when you look back at Rangers' recent history, it may seem a strange one to say a win over a Russian side that no one had ever heard of before that draw was made, and very few have heard of since, was really important. But it was really important to Rangers, not just for the financially, because it also gave them group stage football and took the finances up a level, but for what that squad was able to achieve going through the qualifiers. Now, Gerrard building that squad, having that first pre-season out in Spain, likes of Goldson coming in, Katic coming in, McGregor coming back, Arfield coming in. That was a big rebuild. Clement has gone through his own rebuild. He's had to try and put his spine of a squad. He's tried to put his stamp on the squad. He's not had to come through those early qualifiers and tick them off week after week. One Thursday you're away, next Thursday you're at home, and then go through those 4. They've not had that experience. But to have group stage football, I think it was so important for that Gerrard side. And you could see game after game, round after round, season after season, that team became really, really accomplished operators at European level. They might not have won things domestically. Now, we all know they should have done. They should have won a league title before they did. They should have won more cups than they did together. But what that team put together in one summer and then added to over time, what they were able to do over Europe, really punching above their weight, time after time, spoke volumes for them and the manager. And I don't think what they achieved in later seasons would have been possible without what they went through early on, because it gave them that team spirit. It gave them that belief of where they were as individuals and where they were as a collective. Now, you mentioned some of those games there. Great nights at Ibrox. Rangers had been starved, obviously, of European football for so long. And to have those type of occasions back at Ibrox, great for the fans, great for the club. But when you're a manager and you try and sell a vision and try and sell a project and you say, oh, come sign for Rangers, we've got European football, that's the type of thing that you're then selling. That's the footage you can then go and show a player and say, look, this is Ibrox on a European night. And that's something that Rangers have to try and get back to over this next wee while, over this next kind of league phase.
Yeah, just thinking about it. See, when you were talking about it there, and you know the 2 years before the season where they actually done well and they actually managed to win the league, you know, they had pretty good runs, and you could argue that it built up and kind of formulated that squad and brought them together the way that it did to finally click in that season. And it was strange because we became normalised to good results in Europe. You know, those Benfica games, if you think about, we were 2-0 up at home and then 3-1 up away and ended up disappointed that we had only drawn with Benfica, who had, you know, the likes of Darwin Núñez and everything else that he fairly tore us to bits before his big move. And, you know, I just feel that the importance of this Europa League run is helping formulate that kind of backdrop. I don't know if that's the right expression, but getting that team togetherness, getting it all together, learning more about and it tells Clement a lot. You know, say we do go and play Thursday night or we do go and play Tottenham and Man U and it's a bit of a scalping, then he knows exactly where we are and he can go to the board and say, right, well, we have taken these steps, but, you know, we're here in terms of beating Malmo, but we're here in terms of where we are against not the elite teams, because, sorry, I don't consider Lyon, Tottenham, Man U to be elite, but I consider them to be in the kind of outstanding bracket of European teams, where even if you look at Man United on Sunday, getting a bit of a whooping off Tottenham, we're not going to be able to do that to Man United, unfortunately. Although if they could defend like they did, that would be really welcomed.
Anything's possible.
You know what I mean? But I think, you know, the overall point is, you know, it goes back to the bigger one, Chris, of how much of a priority and things this is. I'm not sure it is massively in terms of the league and the cups, but it's a priority for the team to keep building and keep trying to, you know, get familiar with each other, keep trying to find their levels. You know, at some point, for example, like Václav Černý is either going to sink or swim at Ibrox. It could be a European game where he suddenly has his Borna Barisic St Mirren moment and kicks on to form. These are the things you're looking for. It's more opportunities for people. It's more games. And I don't know if we could slightly revisit what I was talking about before and you talk about the squad and things like that. I think when it comes to a game like Sunday, Hibs, you know, slightly over 2 days later, I think that Clement needs to be a wee bit braver in his selection and the decisions that he makes. And yeah, look, starting Igamani was brave, putting Bijrami out, putting Dessers out. I get it all, but I just think he could have been slightly more different. I really don't agree with substitutions. I don't think they worked. I think that caused us a lot of issues. And I don't know, Chris, if I can just kind of put that back slightly to you a wee bit. How do you think? Do you think he handled that well on Sunday? Do you think that there's other things that he could have done which would have helped the situation? Am I maybe just being too harsh on it? I don't know.
I think you'll probably be able to answer that question better come this Sunday, coming off the back of, now obviously Rangers don't have the travel aspect this week, but a really testing game on Thursday. The same negatives of European football, if you like. The players are not going to get to their bed until really early on Friday morning. They'll have to get in. They'll do their session. They'll build up to the game on Sunday. The team I think he picks against St Johnstone on Sunday, even with that later kickoff, I think that'll tell you if he has learned those lessons as you've outlined there. I spoke to him in pre-season out in Holland, and he mentioned the fact that James Tavernier, Conor Goldson had been overplayed in previous seasons, played too much football, and for me that played a part in Conor's decline towards the end of his time at the club, and plays a part in where Tav is at present. Can't make that same mistake again. Games like Sunday or previously against Dundee looked like ideal opportunities to give Tav a rest. St Johnstone on Sunday, again, you could easily put in Sterling in at right back, put Casemiro in at right back. If Rangers don't win the game, they're not. Very few people are going to say it's because Tav wasn't playing. That was the reason. You mentioned being brave there. It's a brave call not to play your captain, as we discussed on the show a few weeks ago. But you're the Rangers manager. You're there to make big calls. You're there to make calls that may not be popular with players. So it may not look popular to drop Tav or not to play Connor Barron or to break up the Suter-Proper partnership. But if you think you get more out of them long term and going forward over the next few weeks by giving them a St Johnstone at Ibrox off or by giving them a Dundee at Ibrox off, then ultimately that's why he's there. And I think we've still to really see how Clement will manage his squad through domestic and European. Obviously, had a couple of European games last season. I think when Rangers went out of the Europa League, it probably came at a good point. Yes, everyone was disappointed. Yes, I think that tie was there, not as a gimme, but the tie was potentially there to be won. I think everyone accepted at that time, the squad, where it was with injuries, it was time just to say, well, we've had our fun in Europe, let's focus domestically. We've got these games until, as I mentioned earlier on, this new league phase runs into January. The manager's going to have to plan his squad. He's going to have to plot his way through Thursday, Sundays, different kickoff times, different challenges, different travel. If he does that properly, Rangers can maintain their title push, and I think they can have a real crack at qualifying from this section, which is a really difficult section when you look at the games. If it doesn't, it won't just be the here and now that Rangers suffered, because players like Tav, like others, if they play too much football now, it will cost them at the end of the season. So I think the point you made about Sunday there, it stands in terms of Sunday. It will stand in terms of next Sunday and the fixtures after that. And so we're really interested to see how he can navigate his way through this European campaign.
Aye, definitely is. I mean, if we put everything into Thursday, I understand that because it's Lyon, it's Ibrox, it's at home. Without being disrespectful to St Johnstone, they should be able to bring in Leon Balogun, Casemiro, Sterling. Sterling. You should be able to play Raskin in midfield. You should be able to play Ross McCausland and mix it up slightly, not too much. You still want Bayrami, Dessers, and things like that. You still want them to start. You still want your bigger players to get the game won, and then you can mix it up further. But I think that's where it goes back to that word bravery, Chris, when we talk about it slightly. But looking at Lyon, Chris, on Thursday, they came in 2007, 2008. We thrashed them 3-0 away. You remember that magnificent night? Lee McCulloch, Daniel Kuzan, and Marcus de Beasley. I always get these mixed up. Beasley, anyway, scored that goal. And even that night, I remember that night, Chris. I don't know how much you remember it before we talk about Ibrox, but they had Janinho, the Brazilian boy, and just firing in free kicks. Now, McGregor tipped a couple over. He hit the bar. We kind of grabbed that goal from McCulloch on the break, but it was back to the wall. And McGregor being particularly good blocking and the free kick thing. And then the second half started, and out of nowhere, I think Kuzan scored around about 50 minutes. and it was just they were in total shell shock. But Kuzan was capable of that, wasn't he? He was capable of those big moments, and when he was in the mood, which was unfortunately for us pretty seldom.
Not quite often enough.
Yeah, sadly. And then that goal from Beasley and the kind of the cross field switch by Kuzan it was, but it was kind of remarkable, and that probably goes down as one of our finest ever results away from home in Europe. Because at the point Lyon we're at, what do you remember? Were you out there? Did you cover that? Was it that slightly a wee bit too early for you in your kind of career? But
just before I really that Manchester season was my first season at the Evening Times and working for the Herald as well. But it was towards the end of it. I actually started doing work experience on the desk towards the end of that campaign. My final exam at uni was actually the morning after the Manchester final. So I had a ticket to go to Manchester. I found the guy that was going to sell me his ticket. Had the plans to go down on the bus. Everything was in place. Got a message in the morning before saying he was going to go and try and sell it in the city centre because he thought he could get more money for it. And my offer was blown out the window. So I didn't get to go to Manchester. So that Lyon game came before I was actually on the desk. Watched that one in a mate's house. Just went. I think there's 3 of us went down to watch it. And like you, it's just like, what is actually going on here? You had no real. Not that he didn't have faith, because that was obviously any side under Walter. Some really great players in that team. You always thought, well, anything is possible, but I think as you outlined, that Lyon side were really, really top level operators. Unfortunately, as they showed a couple of weeks later at Ibrox, and everything that went right for Rangers, I think, on the road just didn't quite go to plan at Ibrox. And as I said to Derek on the morning briefing this morning, the night that a young man called Benzema turned up and showed that he was quite good at football. Now whatever happened to him, but I think the Ibrox game, it just felt so flat because you had beaten them out there, and not a case of people took it for granted, but you saw how the away game had gone. You thought, well, Rangers have got a chance here, and qualification earlier on in the campaign, I thought, well, it's really on the cards. This could be a big moment for the club to get out of this section, and of course it didn't quite go to plan. Were you at the Ibrox game as well? Did you go?
Yeah, I was. I didn't go to Lyon actually, and I was close to going. Decided against it. Didn't go to Lyon, and I can't remember. It would have been round about that time that I'd done a few European trips, because I remember going to Stuttgart and the one where Bugera had his big run and played the 1-2 with Rothen and fired in that equaliser. We went by bus, and that was an experience to say the least. So yeah, I was going to a few European games. Didn't go to Lyon. Watched that again in the house like you, just dumbfounded actually, high as a kite. And then the home game, I always remember a lot of people talk about that as Benzema's hat-trick at Ibrox. He didn't get a hat-trick, he got 2. And it was Govu, a little player called Sidney Govu, who was not bad either. I'm pretty sure he thrashed in the first one. But that game, I always remember it because Dartsville missed that glorious chance, didn't he? Around about 80 minutes, the ball across the face, and he loops it over. And it just showed you, because if we'd scored that, a point was enough and we were going through. We went out and we went all the way to Manchester. So it's fine margins. And it's funny when you talk about kind of Manchester, and I've done nights with kind of Boydie and Big Jig and stuff like that. And they were like, we all knew that Walter wanted us to go out in Panathinaikos because he started Chris up front. And Walter later admitted to the boys that Europe was kind of a distraction and he wanted to concentrate. So that's always a good laugh from the boys when they talk about that. But just shows the fine margins, because that night, after getting a bit of a, as I said before, a bit of a going over by Lyon at home, you're leaving bitterly disappointed. And it just turns out that moment took us to Manchester, or set up that potential run. So it's fine margins, Chris. But how do you see Thursday going, if we talk about, obviously the importance of Ibrox? And something I wanted to ask you, because we talked about the importance of Ibrox ahead of Sunday against Hibs. It didn't really work, and that's where Ibrox can have 2 sides to it. I've got to be honest. I think that if we are going to have a really successful Thursday, I think we need to start well, give the crowd something, and the crowd need to give it back. They both need to feed off each other. But I think this is going to be a really, really tough one.
I think you summed it up perfectly there. It's not a case of the crowd have to inspire the players or the players have to give the crowd something to buy into. It's going to have to be that synergy. I think, as the manager called it a few times last season, it's going to be a collective effort. I don't think you can downplay the Ibrox factor, because we've seen it so often, and not just in the great night like Leipzig was. We saw it throughout that run. We saw it in some of the Gerrard games that you mentioned earlier on. Ibrox can play a factor. I don't think it'll be a case of, you mentioned there's some of the big players that Lyon have got, like Lacazette, like Matic. They're not going to be spooked by Ibrox, and these guys have played and won at the very highest level. I don't think they'll walk out and be intimidated by whatever noise and whatever atmosphere and whatever colour and display is there. But it can raise the levels of the Rangers players. If you are Conor Barron, does it just give you that wee bit extra to go and win a 50-50 in the middle of the park? Does it, if you're Cyril Dessers, for example, can it turn you into Alfredo Morelos for one night only? Can it just raise the levels of these players? Can it make good players do great things against very, very good levels of opposition? I think that's where the Ibrox factor, I'm sure the manager will mention it at his presser before the game. Like you said, I thought Sunday was a bit flat. People expected more from the team, expected more from the fans on the back of Thursday. And we spoke about how impressive that was in Malmo. I felt Sunday could have been a bit better all round. It never really caught fire. Never really got
like they were both waiting for each other, didn't it?
And that can't really be the case on Thursday night. If the fans are waiting for the team and the team are waiting for the fans, by that stage Lyon could already be 1-0 up, and it could be a very difficult night. So I think it's all set up there for Rangers. I don't think you can underestimate the size of the challenge. Lyon, clearly a very accomplished side. It will be difficult for Rangers, but that 12th man could just be enough to get them over the line. So time will tell how the 90 minutes unfolds, and of course we'll have full preview from the press conference. We'll have all the preview shows live from Ibrox. We'll have the post-match show live from Ibrox, full press conference, reaction from the players. So the Ranger Review is your place for all your Europa League action, reaction, analysis, insight, and everything to go around not just this game obviously, but the game and on Sunday evening against St Johnstone as well. Stevie, thanks as always for your time, and thank you to everyone for joining us on this edition of The Talking Point. If you like what we do here on the YouTube channel, please hit the subscribe button to support our work. You can, of course, join myself, Stevie, Josh and Derek on our morning briefing show, 9:30 every day. And as I mentioned, we'll have the pre- and post-match videos on Thursday, full press conference, reaction and videos. We'll have big interviews, tactical analysis from Josh. Stevie's column will be out on the website at the end of the week as well. And the best way to consume the best Rangers journalism is by subscribing to the website. And as we both said at the top of the show, we really appreciate all the comments, all the supports, everything that we get from all the viewers and readers. So thank you again, Stevie. Thank you to yourself once again. And I shall catch you on Thursday night.
Yeah, I was just looking, Chris, just before we go. Zaha, Mikatadze, Benrahma, Lacazette, Cherki, Matic. 2-0 Rangers, easy.